This Arlington cemetery story just keeps getting worse for Donald Trump and JD Vance. You'd think that after all the reports of Donald Trump disparaging members of our military, he wouldn't want additional headlines drawing attention to his general disrespect and disregard, but here we are. And JD Vance was actually forced to answer for this recent controversy at a campaign appearance, but just in case you haven't been following this one closely, I want to refresh your memory on the series of events here. Donald Trump went to Arlington National Cemetery, as NPR reports, quote, to participate in an event to mark the 3rd anniversary of a deadly attack on U.S. troops in Afghanistan. As U.S. forces withdrew from the country, 13 service members were killed in the attack. The Trump campaign has blamed President Biden and Vice President Harris for the chaotic withdrawal. So basically, he went to Arlington National Cemetery for a partisan political photo op. And then things got complicated. Reading again from reporting from NPR. 2 members of Donald Trump's campaign staff had a verbal and physical altercation Monday with an official at Arlington National Cemetery, where the former president participated in a wreath-laying ceremony, NPR has learned. A source with knowledge of the incident said the cemetery official tried to prevent Trump staffers from filming and photographing in a section where recent U.S. casualties are buried. The source said Arlington officials had made clear that only cemetery staff members would be authorized to take photographs or film in the area, known as Section 60. When the cemetery official tried to prevent Trump campaign staff from entering Section 60, campaign staff verbally abused and pushed the official aside, according to the source. Now, we can picture this happening, right? I mean, this is the same campaign that just brought back Corey Lewandowski. You remember when he was charged with battery after an altercation with a reporter? I know those charges got dropped, but Donald Trump surrounds himself with people who are unhinged. And we already know Donald Trump exhibits a pattern of disrespect to fallen soldiers. And now we have the Associated Press confirming elements of this story. Reading from their reporting, Donald Trump's campaign was warned about not taking photographs before an altercation at Arlington National Cemetery during a wreath-laying ceremony earlier this week to honor service members killed in the Afghanistan war withdrawal, a defense official told the Associated Press on Wednesday. The official spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter concerning Monday's events. It came a day after NPR reported, citing a source with knowledge of the incident, that 2 Trump campaign staff members verbally abused and pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to stop them from filming and photographing in Section 60, the burial site for military personnel killed while fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. Quote, federal law prohibits political campaign or election-related activities within Army National Military cemeteries, to include photographers, content creators, or any other persons attending for purposes or in direct support of a partisan political candidate's campaign. The cemetery official's statement said, quote, Arlington National Cemetery reinforced and widely shared this law and its prohibitions with all participants. We can confirm there was an incident and a report was filed. Now, Trump's team is reiterating that Trump was there at the invitation of families of service members who were killed. They are denying that a staffer pushed a cemetery official, and they say their team was granted permission to have a photographer. And like I said, JD Vance was given the opportunity to respond to this growing controversy at a campaign stop in Pennsylvania.
Go ahead.
Hi, Senator. Good to see you again. Ali Novello with CBS News. I have 2 questions for you. One, could you tell us more about the altercation that happened at the Arlington Cemetery? And 2, what does debate prep look like for yourself and for Trump at this time?
Well, I think, first of all, the altercation at Arlington Cemetery is the media creating a story where I really don't think that there is one. There is verifiable evidence. There is verifiable evidence that the campaign was allowed to have a photographer there. There's verifiable, they were invited to have a photographer there. There's verifiable evidence that the families of these poor people who had their loved ones die 3 years ago at Abbey Road, Abbey Gate, those 13 Americans, a lot of them were there with the president. They invited him to be there and to support them. That's not an insult to the memories of their loved ones. They wanted Donald Trump there, and thank God that we have a president who stands with our veterans instead of one who runs away from them. Now, Now, it is amazing to me that you have apparently somebody at Arlington Cemetery, some staff member, had a little disagreement with somebody, and the media has turned this into a national news story. You know what I think our veterans care a lot more about?
So wait. And sorry to cut in here. The first half of that clip, fully in line with the denials that we're already hearing from the Trump campaign. There was emphasis on the invitation from the families of service members who were killed. There was emphasis on the permission to have a photographer. But then here comes JD Vance with the quote, "You have some staff member at Arlington Cemetery who had a little disagreement with somebody." So, Buddy, can we hear a little bit more about that, the disagreement? What exactly was the disagreement? Is it at all related to the statement released by Arlington National Cemetery noting that federal law prohibits political campaigns within the cemetery to include photographers for purposes of a partisan political candidate's campaign? Was the disagreement at all related to that? And I cut him off before he was about to say what he thinks of veterans, what he thinks veterans care more about. And I can tell you what he wasn't going to say. He wasn't going to remind everyone in the room about Donald Trump calling Americans who died in war suckers and losers, or that he likes soldiers who weren't captured, or that the Presidential Medal of Freedom is better than the Medal of Honor because you're still beautiful and alive. So this really becomes a who are you going to believe situation. And I want to play a clip from an interview on CNN with former NATO Supreme Allied Commander General Wesley Clark, so you can hear from someone who isn't desperate to defend every single thing Donald Trump does, like JD Vance.
Well, I think it's totally inappropriate that Donald Trump has used that part of Arlington Cemetery that way for a partisan political purpose.
I think that is an important point here. We don't need to get into a back and forth about who has evidence for what. He wasn't supposed to turn this into a political stunt, and he did. And for those of you who are thinking, but what about the invitation from the family members of the fallen? Here is NPR reporter Quill Lawrence on PBS NewsHour with an important consideration on this point.
The rules are in place for a reason.
In one of the photos that's widely circulating and being used by the Trump campaign, former President Trump is with family members of a fallen soldier. But to the left and the right of that soldier's grave, you can see two other tombstones. And it seems fairly clear that neither of those families has given consent for the Trump campaign to use these photographs. And that's incredibly painful for these families. And many of them are still grieving the loss of their loved one.
So again, this seems to fit with Donald Trump's pattern, no? Ultimately, he isn't going to do the legwork to ensure the other family members of fallen soldiers consent to him using these photos in his campaign. He got what he wanted, and he's going to use it to try to prop up his campaign. And people like JD Vance are going to help him do it, no matter the cost, no matter the damage, no matter the harm that it may inflict on others. So again, it comes down to who are you going to believe? Are you going to believe Donald Trump and JD Vance, who seemingly can't go even 1 second in their day without lying? Or are you going to believe the reports piling up about yet another example of Donald Trump's lengthy history of disrespect? I'd love to know what you think about this, so please tell me in the comments below, or you can find me on social media at Brittany Page.